Moon in the Signs intro. Today we're starting a series on the moon in the signs. The moon is often reduced to emotions, moods, and sensitivity. That is true, but it barely scratches the surface. In a chart, the moon shows how you experience yourself when there is nothing to perform, prove, or explain. It describes your instinctive reactions, your private needs, your patterns of comfort, and the ways you try to feel safe when life becomes uncertain. It also reveals what settles your nervous system, what makes you withdraw, and what you return to when you need to restore yourself. This is why the moon is not only about feelings. It is about familiarity. It is about protection. It is about the inner rhythm you live by, whether you are conscious of it or not. Two people can both say they want peace, but mean very different things by it. One may need space and quiet, another needs closeness and reassurance. One feels secure through order and predictability, another through freedom to respond in the moment. That difference is not accidental. The moon explains it. The sign the moon is in shows how those instincts take shape. It changes the emotional style, the coping pattern, and the way a person looks for steadiness. Some moon placements process everything immediately and visibly. Others hold things in until they can make sense of them in private. Some need movement, some need consistency, some need control, and some need trust before they can truly relax. The same applies to attachment and daily life. The moon describes what feels natural to you, what you depend on without always realizing it, and where you can become reactive, guarded, or overly attached when your needs go unmet. It often shows the habits that keep you grounded, and the habits that keep repeating simply because they are familiar. In the natal chart, the sign shows the style, the house shows where these patterns play out most clearly, and the aspects show whether the moon moves with ease, tension, or intensity. So in this series, we're starting with the sign. We're going to look at how the moon operates in each sign, what it needs, how it protects itself, what helps it feel secure, and where it can become stuck in patterns that no longer serve it. No recycle keywords, no flat stereotypes, just how the placement actually works. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to follow the series, and book a consultation for a more personal understanding of your chart. Moon in Libra. Moon in Libra does not like emotional chaos thrown across the room like somebody lost a bet with their nervous system. It calibrates, adjusts, softens, tries to read the atmosphere, the tone, the other person's face, the meaning behind the meaning, and whether the situation can still be rescued with grace before everyone says something regrettable. This is one of the most relationally aware moon placements in the chart because feelings here do not exist in a vacuum. Something happens and the system immediately registers the balance, the dynamic, the response, and how this is all affecting the connection. Quietly, constantly, the moon describes what makes you feel safe, how you regulate yourself, and what your inner world reaches for under pressure. In Libra, that process becomes thoughtful, interpersonal, and oriented toward harmony. This is not a moon that wants to sit in pure emotional rawness without context, reflection, or some attempt at mutual understanding. It wants equilibrium, preferably beautifully, with fairness, with emotional intelligence, with a strong chance that nobody ends up flipping a metaphorical table in the middle of the conversation. The point is security through balance. That is one of the most important things to understand about Moon in Libra. Emotional safety is tied to harmony and the quality of the connection. These people often feel better when the atmosphere is calm, the interaction is respectful, and there is some sense that both people are trying to meet in the middle. When there is reciprocity, civility, or at least a shared desire not to turn every disagreement into a live-action collapse, their system settles. But when everything feels harsh, messy, or confrontational, the system does not relax. It wobbles, because this moon placement does not enjoy emotional ugliness. It likes harmony. It likes fairness. It likes the sense that things can be worked through without destroying the room. That does not mean every moon in Libra person is emotionally effortless, permanently serene, and gliding through conflict like a diplomat in expensive shoes. It means their inner life is relational. There is a strong link here between emotion and interaction. They often know how they feel by noticing how the energy between themselves and others changes. A look, a shift in tone, a pause that lasts slightly too long, an imbalance in effort, an atmosphere that suddenly feels off, all of that registers quickly. This can create tact, sensitivity, and a strong instinct for adjustment. It can also create anxiety around conflict that can make them seem emotionally composed. And in many ways, they are. Moon in Libra often has a natural tendency to regulate itself by restoring balance. If something is tense, they try to smooth it out. If something feels unfair, they want to correct it. If something is uncomfortable, they often look for a way to bring perspective, proportion, and grace back into the situation. Sometimes that response is genuinely healing. Sometimes it turns into emotional self-editing with excellent manners. This is one of the main lessons of the placement. Peacekeeping is not the same as peace, because Moon in Libra can become so focused on maintaining harmony that it loses touch with what it actually feels. Not every disagreement is a disaster. Not every uncomfortable truth is bad energy. Not every emotional reaction should be made more pleasant just because other people prefer their tension with decorative packaging. But this moon does not naturally enjoy friction. Friction feels destabilizing. Harshness feels invasive. Conflict without mutual respect can feel like being trapped at a dinner table where everyone is smiling and no one is emotionally insured. So people with this placement often need to learn how to stay honest without feeling like honesty automatically ruins everything. Not become rude. Not abandon diplomacy. Not pretend harmony does not matter. Just let truth exist without over-polishing it into something more socially convenient. Now, when Moon is in Libra, the emotional nature is usually refined. They are not always obvious about what they need. If they are upset, it may come out as withdrawal, tension, over-accommodation, or a very specific kind of I'm fine that should concern everyone immediately. If they are overwhelmed, they may try to make things nicer before admitting they are not okay. If they care, it often shows through consideration, responsiveness, and effort to keep the connection balanced. There can be something very elegant about this. A lot of people experience emotion in ways that leave collateral damage everywhere. Moon in Libra often tries very hard not to do that. They notice impact. They care how things land. They usually do not want every feeling to become a public demolition project. And that matters, because even when this placement is avoidant, there is often a genuine desire to preserve closeness, fairness, and emotional dignity. They are not usually trying to be fake. They are trying to keep the bridge intact, sometimes very skillfully, sometimes too skillfully. Now, let's talk about what makes this moon feel safe. Moon in Libra needs emotional balance. It can trust. It needs reciprocity. It needs respect. It needs the sense that closeness does not require emotional chaos as an entrance fee. This is why volatile or confrontational environments can feel especially difficult for this placement. Too much aggression, too much tension, too little consideration, too many people treating bluntness like a spiritual gift to humanity. All of that can make Moon in Libra shut down, placate, or quietly disappear into internal overprocessing. And when this moon starts overprocessing, it does not become clearer. It becomes more divided. There is a strong protective quality here. Moon in Libra often protects itself by staying composed, seeing multiple sides, and trying to avoid emotional extremity. That can look like diplomacy, charm, thoughtfulness, or patience. But it can also look like indecision, suppression, or giving too much weight to everyone else's comfort. Underneath it, there is usually one simple instinct. If I can keep this balanced, I can keep this safe. So even though Libra is often described as graceful, the moon here can actually be very sensitive in a polished, responsive way. Not shallow, attuned. There is a difference. This placement may not always express feeling in a raw or dramatic style, but it absolutely feels things. It just tends to process through reflection, comparison, and relational awareness before showing the full emotional picture. That is why Moon in Libra people are often misunderstood. Others may assume they are less affected than they really are, just because they are measured, socially aware, or reluctant to escalate. In reality, they often notice everything. They simply do not always trust direct emotional force as the best method. And sometimes that composure is a strength. Sometimes it keeps them too far away from their own anger. Now, in relationships, Moon in Libra needs fairness and mutual effort. Not chaos, not chronic insensitivity, not a connection where one person gets to be intense and authentic while the other person quietly absorbs the emotional debris like a decorative rug. They need reciprocity. They usually do better when people are kind, emotionally literate, and willing to listen as much as they speak. Not perfect, but fair. If something is wrong, they want it addressed with some level of care. If something hurts, they want it acknowledged without the whole interaction turning into a competition for who gets to be the least regulated. This Moon wants to feel met. Even if the relationship is complicated, even if life is messy, there needs to be some sense of balance in how love, attention, and emotional labor are exchanged. Moon in Libra often struggles in relationships where everything becomes one-sided, coarse, or full of unnecessary conflict. Because I just say whatever I feel is not automatically honesty. Sometimes it is poor emotional interior design. They also need relationships that feel graceful to live inside. This does not mean perfect. It means respectful. Something where the emotional environment allows tenderness, reflection, and actual listening. Moon in Libra tends to struggle when emotional life becomes abrasive, inequitable, or chronically tense. If everything feels like a low-grade argument wearing nice clothes, exhaustion builds quickly. Now, one of the most valuable things about this placement is that it can be deeply considerate. They often care through listening. They often soothe through perspective. They often notice what would create more ease for everyone involved. There is devotion here, a kind of emotional civility. Life becomes difficult, and this Moon often responds by trying to restore proportion, connection, and mutual understanding. That is a real strength. They are not naturally built for relational chaos. They are built for adjustment. And yes, sometimes that creates peace. Sometimes it creates self-erasure. Again, both things can be true. This is why emotional maturity with Moon in Libra often involves learning that fairness includes them too. It is also self-respect. It is also directness. It is also refusing to smile through situations that are quietly draining the life out of them. Because this Moon placement can accommodate for far too long. The good news is that it usually has a strong instinct for repair. Moon in Libra is often thoughtful, conciliatory, and willing to work through conflict when the other person is acting in good faith. Often the system responds well to kindness, mutual effort, and emotional nuance. They may dislike tension, but they are not necessarily incapable of dealing with it. That can actually be a gift. They often know how to bring people back to center. But the shadow side is people-pleasing, indecision, or emotional avoidance disguised as diplomacy. That is where problems start. The care is real. The harmony is real. The self-abandonment is not always necessary. Now, let's talk about childhood patterns, because the Moon often points there too. With Moon in Libra, there is often some early lesson around atmosphere, approval, or relational balance. Maybe keeping the peace mattered. Maybe fairness was emphasized. Maybe conflict felt disruptive. Maybe they learned, consciously or not, that being agreeable, pleasant, or emotionally composed helped maintain connection. Not in every case, of course. But very often, this placement grows through developing sensitivity to dynamics, social tone, and the emotional temperature of other people. As adults, that can make them charming, considerate, and relationally intelligent, but it can also make disapproval or discord feel heavier than it objectively needs to. Because when your system is tuned to balance, disharmony does not feel minor. It feels invasive. Moon in Libra often trusts connection before it trusts confrontation. And that is important to understand, because the deeper need here is not perfection. It is peace with dignity. It is the ability to be in relationship without constantly bracing for imbalance, harshness, or emotional ugliness. It is the sense that love can be mutual, elegant, and honest at the same time. In daily life, this Moon usually benefits from relational and aesthetic balance. Good conversation helps. Beauty helps. Calm environments help. Fairness helps. Gentle company helps. Feeling considered helps. When they are overwhelmed, emotionally crowded, or stuck in too much interpersonal tension, the whole system can become unsettled quickly. This placement does not do especially well with relational noise. It needs harmony. Sometimes the cure is not another debate about who technically started it. Sometimes the cure is literally leaving the room and sitting somewhere pretty. Now, let's talk about the shadow patterns more clearly. The first is avoidance, trying so hard to prevent conflict that the real issue never gets addressed. The second is overaccommodation, adjusting to everyone else so completely that their own emotional reality starts to blur. The third is indecision, seeing every angle so clearly that it becomes difficult to act, speak, or choose with conviction. Moon in Libra matures a lot when it learns that tension can be temporary, and directness does not automatically destroy love. Another important lesson here is that harmony and suppression are not the same thing. This moon absolutely values peace, but sometimes it values external peace so much that internal truth gets politely escorted out the back door. Everything looks fine. The tone is lovely. The resentment is developing excellent bone structure underneath. Not ideal. So part of the growth is learning that a little honest discomfort can protect real closeness, while too much niceness can quietly kill it. The healthiest moon in Libra knows how to preserve connection without bargaining away its own center. Now, when this placement is working well, it is gracious, thoughtful, fair-minded, and emotionally intelligent. It brings balance. It brings charm. It brings a strong ability to create connection through respect and consideration. These people can be incredibly soothing for others because Moon in Libra understands something important. People often open more easily when they feel safe from emotional harshness. This placement knows how to create room. It knows how to bring perspective. It knows how to make intimacy feel less like a battlefield and more like an actual exchange between adults. That said, not all harmony is truth, and that is the refinement. The goal is not to become less diplomatic, less caring, or less relationally aware. The goal is honesty with backbone, to listen without disappearing, to care without overcompromising, to stay gracious without turning grace into emotional self-editing. Because Moon in Libra has real strength, not the loud kind, not the combative kind, the balancing kind, the kind that mediates, the kind that beautifies, the kind that reminds people that emotional intelligence is not weakness, and consideration is not superficial. It may not always be the most confrontational moon placement. It may not always be the most decisive under pressure. It may not always enjoy unnecessary conflict, emotional crudeness, or people who think brutally honest is a charming personality category. But it is thoughtful. And in a world full of noise, rudeness, and people confusing instability with passion, that kind of grace has real value. This was the Moon in Libra. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and book a consultation for a more personal understanding of your chart.